I saw a really interesting interview a couple of weeks ago about between a golf pro, young pro, and his caddy. And something really struck me, which was this principle of they had this like husband and wife relationship. It was really quite catty in some ways, but clearly they were very close, had massive respect for each other. And a couple of things really jumped out for me that I think are incredibly relevant for business. My background's tennis, as we know, in terms of coaching. That's where my coaching stems from. And there are lots of different types of coaches. There's various kind of how do you feel and how does that make you feel kind of stuff, and then there's very dictatorial type stuff, and it's also, of course, it's depending on the situation. You can't say to a player in the middle of a match, how do you feel about missing? You just kind of have to encourage them to crack on. You might have the opportunity to talk to them afterwards, but tennis, as far as I know. And so, I was listening to this golf interview between this player and this caddy, and they were talking about how they make decisions, and everything revolved around us. And they showed some clips of these two players arguing on the course. Mm-hmm. Sorry, the player and caddy arguing on the course. And a lot of people might think, okay, so what? But it literally was a case of them sort of almost fighting over club selection and whether he should go for it over the trees or just chip out.
And this is in a competition.
And this is in a competition.
Not in a practice situation.
Yeah. And it got me thinking, because all my coaching is based on the principle of, on my background tennis, where it is illegal to coach during competition. Yeah. It's against the rules. And I'm unaware of any other sport where that happens. Because can you get coaching in cricket? Yes, of course you can, because half the team's sitting with the coach in the dressing room before they go out. Rugby, you have technical timeouts, and there's stuff going on from the side.
But it's not as you're playing.
They'll be yelling from the side.
Yeah,
and even the coaches. American football's the same. Everything's built around the coaches, and 4 or 5 coaches. Sometimes they override each other, and the game is so stop-start to include those coaching opportunities. Basketball, you have timeouts. Netball, the same, so on and so forth. Swimming, there's lots of encouragement from the side. But as far as I'm aware, tennis is the only sport that I've come across where coaching isn't allowed. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think there's a great relevance to leadership and how you work with your teams, because there's a kind of a truism with the difference between management and leadership. Managers will tell people what to do, create systems. Leaders will coach their team members to be able to make decisions themselves. And I'm always mindful or minded of coaching young children and parents having a go at me because I wasn't hitting balls with their child. And I'd say, well, there's no point me hitting balls with your child because they're never going to play me in a match. I'm 20 years older, bigger, stronger, faster, and more experienced. They're going to play the other 5-year-old, the other 6-year-old. Yeah. So they've got to get used to that. Yeah. Okay. And if they did something wrong, parents would say, well, are you going to tell him what he's done wrong, or are you going to fix it? No, because that's what a manager does. As a coach, and therefore a leader, my job was to say to that 5-year-old, okay, you hit that over the fence rather than in the court. Why do you think that is? Let's take a time out. Why do you think that is? Where were your strings pointing? Did you swing too fast, too hard, so on and so forth? Were you off balance? What do you think it is? Get them to solve the problem. Because I can't coach in the match. Yeah. So if they do that in a match, and that's a very simple example, they need to be able to figure it out and problem solve themselves. So for me, leaders are great coaches because they enable teams to solve problems themselves. Managers tell people what to do in quite a structured way. And it was just the contrast between listening to these, the golfer and the caddy, and my background in tennis. It was where one, coaching is encouraged because basically you've got a coach walking alongside you. Yeah. I know coaches, I know golf pros have coaches, but a caddy is basically their mental coach. They're,
Are they as experienced as the
some of
player?
some of them are pro golfers themselves,
Right.
scratch players themselves, very 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 good golfers. Some less than others. Some of them are much older, in their 50s, 60s. They've been walking courses, know them inside out, know the players. But the most important thing is they know the players inside out, how they tick, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what they're capable of doing. When they get a little bit hot, when to calm them down, all that sort of stuff. I mean, do you know of any other sports? Do you know any sports where coaching's not allowed? Ice skating?
During a competition in ice skating, you're not allowed to give the skater any kind of direction. But it's literally, you can do it up to the moment they step on the ice, and you can do it as they step off the ice, but you cannot...
When they're on the ice.
When they're on the ice,
right.
and it's there, and we're talking like 2-3 minute programs. Some of them for younger skaters, it might only be 90 seconds. But during that, however long that period is, 2-3 minutes, the coaches in a competition environment are not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to clap and give any kind of, there's no code claps or anything like that. People have been...
Yeah, tennis is exactly the same.
Have been disqualified for that before.
Because you can be out on a tennis court for 4 hours.
Yeah. Obviously with ice skating...
And your coach can be on the stands.
Yeah, with ice skating it's a very quick thing, and, the coaching that happens is similar to what you were saying about tennis, is when they're practicing, and they all have a warm-up the morning of the skate in the afternoon, but in their lessons prior to that, the coach will go through things like, well, if you fell there, what do you do? How quickly do you get up? Where are you going to drop the most points? If you miss this bit, in order to get back in time, there are places where it's beneficial to drop and places where it's really not beneficial to drop, in terms of things like if you drop in the middle of a step sequence, you lose more points than if you drop because you're doing some power skating to get to the next transition. So a good coach will teach them how to deal with things that go wrong, like you were saying, but they have to be able to think of that themselves when they're on the ice. If they fall, or if they, I don't know, don't land a jump or whatever, they've got to think themselves, similar to your tennis players, of how do I deal with this? Can I catch up and get back into the right place? And the top skaters will also be making a mental calculation of what's that going to do to my score, and how do I maximize the score that I've got left? And sometimes you'll get skaters who maybe have got a double jump in, but they actually attempt and sometimes land a triple, for example, or they've got a single and they go for a double to try and build their points back up. And they can do that. They don't have to stick to their exact program. But only a good skater, probably the more experienced ones, can actually make that calculation, because they're still skating and doing their program and doing all the presentation, but they're also doing some mental calculations about maths, about what do they know, how confident do they feel in it. So a good coach will handle all of that, but they cannot do it once they've stepped on the ice. When that person's name is announced, that's it.
That's it, done. Yeah. You're right. I mean, there have been incidences in tennis where coaches have been, or parents, because it's not even if it's the coach.
Yeah.
Andy Murray had a situation with his mum Judy. She was fist pumping in a certain way, and she got investigated for coaching.
Yeah.
She wasn't even his coach.
Yeah.
So it is interesting, because I'm thinking, with business owners specifically, I have a role with them to enable them to problem solve on their own.
Yeah.
So I've got that tennis attitude, because when they're running their businesses, I'm not sitting at the desk alongside them.
No.
But at the same time, I really like that principle that golfers and caddies take onto the course, that they have got somebody to at least have a sounding board.
Yeah.
And
kind of walk alongside them.
Alongside them and second guess. And taking it away from me, my question, I guess, for people listening is, within your businesses and the teams that you've got, which one are you? Are you just allowing people to get on with it and bumble along on their own? Because once the workday has started, you don't want to be disturbed, and therefore it's illegal to come and talk to you? Or are you walking the floor with them and helping them make those decisions, and at the same time coaching them to be able to make those decisions on their own when you're not there? Because for me, if you want to run a business that functions without you, whether that's for a day's holiday, a week's holiday, 6 weeks in Spain or whatever, you have to invest coaching time with your team members to enable them to problem solve. And you also have to accept that sometimes when they're solving those problems on their own, they're going to make mistakes.
Or just do it differently from how you
or
would
do it differently.
Hence it's not necessarily wrong,
yeah,
but they maybe get to the answer a different way than what you would have done.
Yeah. I'd really like to know what people think on this one, because I think, the sport analogy aside, I think, and it does work. It's so stark, the difference. What kind of boss are you? If you're a business owner, are you? Do you fall into that manager camp of, right, this is how we do it, these are the processes, off you go. If you don't do it like that, it's 1 strike, 2 strikes, and you're out. Or this is the result, this is the vision, this is where we want to get to. I'll help you get there. You've got to make the decisions, but I'll help you, give you the tools to be able to make improved decisions as we go along the journey.
And it's important that people are honest with themselves, even if they don't tell anybody what the real answer is, because everybody wants to be in that camp of going, oh yes, I'm a true leader and I empower my staff and blah, blah, blah. The reality is there's an awful lot of managers out there, and there are some who are micromanagers as well.
Yeah.
Much as we would all like to say, oh yes, I empower my staff to go off and do it, I don't think anyone has not been in a situation where they've gone, oh, but could you just do it this way?
This way, yeah.
So you're not going to learn anything from it yourself as a business owner, leader, unless you're honest, even if it's only internally, about where you genuinely are. And you may not be in 100% of the time. You might be sometimes a manager, sometimes a leader.
Yeah.
But if you're not honest with yourself about where you are in that, then you can't be better yourself, can you?
Correct. Oh, yeah, that's where it all starts, isn't it? Is recognising your baseline.
Yep.
Cool. Very good.